This trip had a little bit of everything. Beautiful roads, cool wildlife encounters, riverside camping, and of course, drama.
There is a hole in my gas tank.
But first, we had to put some miles down.
This is the earliest we've got up, and that's because we're going to head into Yellowstone today. And Yellowstone is enormous. There's so much to see and so many hikes, and it's not possible to do it all in one day, but we get as much as we can done today. So we're up, we're ready to go.
It took a while to get into the center of Yellowstone National Park, but we showed up just in time to see Old Faithful erupting. The geyser basin around Old Faithful is worth spending some time walking around since it has dozens of colorful bubbling pools and steaming vents. From the geyser basin, we made our way through Hayden Valley in hope of seeing some wildlife. There's always the chance of seeing wolves and bears, and you're almost guaranteed to see massive herds of bison along the Yellowstone River. These huge animals can weigh over a ton and usually slowly make their way through the grass, eating and rolling in the dirt. Don't be fooled though, they're fast, and just like any of the wild animals in Yellowstone, you don't want to get close. At the north end of the park, we stopped off at the Mammoth Terraces to admire the unusual formations. We'd been looking out for bears all day and really wanted to see a grizzly. On our way out of the park, we finally got our wish.
Yeah, it's the bear.
My 2-year-old was very excited to see the bears, which made steady filming very difficult.
We are at Red Rock Pass, where we're airing down, ready to continue on our trail. Last night, we stayed at a KOA just outside of West Yellowstone. We had to get some laundry done, and it was just a good, convenient place, although very expensive, especially even for a KOA, really expensive. As we came up the pass, there was a surprise hailstorm that kind of came out of nowhere, and as we pulled over to air down, the last few drops of rain were coming. So hopefully now, it's all done, and we can continue in the sunshine.
When we'd left Yellowstone National Park, we'd crossed from Wyoming into Montana, where we'd stayed at the KOA. To reach Red Rock Pass, we'd briefly dropped down into Idaho, and at the top of the pass, we'd gone back into Montana. Our route took us along the base of the hazy Centennial Mountains, which make up the border between Idaho and Montana, following the edge of the flat Alaska Basin and Centennial Valley.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool road. I don't know what birds those are, but they're very beaky.
The flat Centennial Valley has huge areas of wetlands, several large lakes, and the Red Rock River, which makes the area perfect for birds and wildlife to gather. The area has large chunks of wilderness and wildlife refuge as a result. Halfway along the Centennial mountain range, we reached the small community of Lakeview, which is made up of just a handful of small wooden buildings that have mostly stood still in time. Shortly after passing through Lakeview, we took a sharp turn to the north to cross the wide, flat valley. At the far side of the valley, we crossed the Brundage Bridge over the Red Rock River that was absolutely teeming with birds before heading up into the rolling, grassy hills between the Snowcrest and the gravelly mountain ranges. With it getting later in the day, we started thinking about stopping to camp. Thankfully, we had plenty of options along the winding Ruby River.
There's another nice little campsite there. Yeah, you got a nice little creek, mountains in the distance. That's pretty nice, that one. This one's occupied. We could ask them to move. Hey! But I'm not gonna do that because I'm a coward. Oh my god. A cow?
We found ourselves a nice little campsite. I was starting to worry a little bit. When we entered the national forest, there was a sign that said that you're only allowed to camp in designated sites, and there weren't any for dozens of miles. Like, we probably drove for a couple hours and didn't see a single site. But then when we dropped down into the valley next to this creek here, we started seeing a bunch of them. And the first few were really overgrown. Some were very occupied. But we found one. We came through a big field of cows to get here and found this one right next to the river here. So this is a nice spot. But more importantly, what is that bug on my roof? I think it's a monster. Look at its antenna. What you got in here? Is that part of your runway?
The next morning, we got all packed up, took the trash out of our vehicles, found a place for the smelly diaper, watched a bird chase a squirrel.
It's a bird fighting a squirrel.
Oh yeah.
and then left the campsite through a field of cows to continue our trip north.
Athal! How did you know that's what he was saying?
We've just stopped at Ruby Reservoir to air up because we are going to go out onto the pavement for a while. Actually, first stop is going to be over at Virginia City. Conrad found an ice cream store, and it looks like it's going to be a perfect place to stop, get lunch, and some ice cream. The little guy just figured out he likes ice cream when he realized that he can eat it without getting brain freeze, so we'll pick some up for him.
What have you got? You got stones?
Virginia City was a complete surprise. It was just a small detour off our route, and one that we were only taking because we wanted some ice cream, but it turns out it's actually a really cool little town that looks like it's barely changed since the late 1800s. Like many other towns in the area, Virginia City was a boomtown that formed after the discovery of gold. It developed so rapidly that for the first few years there was no law enforcement or justice system, but it ended up being the capital of Montana Territory and the site of Montana's first newspaper and public school. Unlike a lot of other boomtowns, Virginia City managed to survive thanks to early preservation efforts and the successful tourism industry, and some great ice cream.
We just stopped just north of Butte, Montana to air down because we just got some unpaved roads and we're going to be following them for a while. I noticed off to the side of the road there was a little trail heading up into the trees alongside a creek. Decided to walk her down here, check it out while Conrad's airing down. There's a nice little campsite up here. It's actually late enough in the day that we could camp here. It's pretty nice. I might suggest that we do that.
We decided to go for it. After getting set up and settled in, Conrad made an unforgivable error.
Put the Jeep in the hole.
He doesn't have a Jeep.
What do you mean, put the Jeep in? Which one's the Jeep, Conrad?
Well, clearly that blue one.
The blue one?
Yeah, they're all the same.
That's a
It's
Jeep?
got a tyre on the back and stuff, you know.
That is not a Jeep. This is how I know you're not ready to do tougher trails.
It is a cool and damp morning this morning. A little bit of light rain going on. It's been going on for a couple of hours now. And honestly, it's quite pleasant. With the heat waves that we had last week and the last few weeks before that, where it was just awful, it's been really nice to have some cooler and some mild weather. And I'm okay with some rain as well, because there's a lot of fires going on right now. I mean, you've probably seen the haze and the footage from the fires. So hopefully that helps with that. So now I need to get packed up, and we're going to start heading north through the hills here, through the mountains here, towards the spot that we stayed at. I don't know how many years ago it was when I made the Overland movie, but it's up on Granite Butte, which is a really cool spot. So hopefully we can make it that far today.
On the climb up from Basin, Montana, I'd noticed a few old structures and spoil tips.
Looks like there's some old mines around us.
There are actually close to 300 old mines and mining claims in the Basin mining district, many of them containing large concentrations of uranium. I later found out that some of the old mines in the area are used for the unusual practice of radon therapy. People pay to go into the mines to get relief from various ailments by exposing themselves to the naturally emitted radioactive radon gas.
So many trees down here.
Yeah, there is a lot.
Oh, you know what? They look cut. I wonder if those were ones that were dead from the bark beetle.
Bark beetles are tiny beetles that have been wreaking havoc with millions of trees across the US, particularly in the Rocky Mountains. Since the start of the 21st century, an area of forest larger than the state of Utah has been killed off because of them. It's something that's getting worse too, since milder winters have allowed the bark beetle populations to rapidly grow and spread. The widespread effect of the beetles often isn't too noticeable from the ground, but it's hard to miss in the drone shots.
There's a moose in the field off to the left when we get into this clearing.
I can hear a motorbike or something coming up behind.
It must have been spooked by the sound of the motorcycles.
A little over 10 miles in, we turned off onto some smaller, unmaintained roads.
I need to back up a little bit and take this corner wider.
Should we call the harbour master out?
That's rude, and I represent that. I'm a little worried about this tree.
With the Alu cab on the back, the Tundra is a big truck. Most of the time it's not an issue, but occasionally I have a problem with clearance under down trees, so make sure I carry a small saw with me for cutting and trimming.
There it is. Alright, what do you think?
This tree was a tight squeeze for me, but I made it through. Of course, Conrad had no problems at all in the GX, even with the tall rooftop tent.
We keep passing cyclists up this road. I think we've passed maybe 5 or 6. And apparently I stopped to talk to one of them. Apparently they're doing the Continental Divide Trail. They're biking it instead of driving it, which it's got to be tough. Right now this is just like straight uphill, and they're all exhausted. I can't imagine how long it takes. I've done parts of it in the truck and it took long enough driving it. And I have all this equipment with me, and they're just on a bicycle, going slow with basically a tiny little tent and a camping mat. This road is a lot more technical than I remember it. I'm not saying it's difficult. I'm not having to spot or anything. We're just driving, but it's just slow going. And I was hoping to make it to Granite Butte or the Granite Butte Lookout tonight. It's currently 2 o'clock. And at this rate, I don't think it's going to happen.
Just as the roads were improving, I noticed I had a big problem.
So heading up the trail, I got out to film Conrad for a second, and there was a really strong smell of gasoline. And I looked underneath the vehicle, and it is dripping gas. So I pulled over, take a look. There is a hole in my gas tank where we drilled in to put in the gasoline heater, and it's very likely that's the problem. But it's in the top, which wouldn't explain why it's dripping. So I'm going to get underneath and take a look. Well, it's not coming from the gasoline heater. I think it's coming from the fuel line. It looks like there might be a hole in the fuel line, and there is an open recall on this with no remedy for the fuel line. So, I mean, it's just dripping constantly. We made it down to some maintained roads, and this leads out to the highway to Helena. So we're going to be able to get down this way. We did have to cut through some private property with no trespassing signs, but thankfully the owners were there. I don't know if I want to say that they were willing to let me through, but they let me through. So thankfully, otherwise I would have to go back up the hill. I did move my boy over to ride with Conrad as well. I just wasn't comfortable having him in here sitting above that fuel leak. I do think the risk is low. It's just dripping straight down onto the ground right behind the gas tank. So it's not anywhere near the exhaust. It's not anywhere near the brakes. It's not near anything hot, but it's a risk I didn't want to take.
In Helena, I got to the Toyota dealer, and within 15 minutes, they had my truck up on a lift, and a short time later, they confirmed it was the fuel line. They ordered the parts to replace the line and prevent the new one from rubbing, but the Tundra was down. Thankfully, we still had the GX, and that's what I take out in the next video.